Welcome to the third show from Galactic Initiative for the original Star Wars radio drama. I'm your host, Jeff. With me is Grand Admiral Sean. Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my friend.
In this video, we will discuss episode 3 of the radio drama called Black Knight, White Princess, and Pawns. It recounted the acquisition of the Death Star plans, and Princess Leia is captured by Darth Vader. I want to say, I'm excited about quality Star Wars. I've been looking forward to a positive review after the mess called Kenobi. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, all things considered. We just made it through the show that no one wanted, and it appears no one watched. But I'm doing well.
We survived.
It's true. I know that this channel has put up several videos regarding the results of the Kenobi series, and I concur with almost 100% of everything that was said. I watched it to the end to be a completist. It's in my job description as a Grand Admiral. But yeah, I could have very much done without it. And I think if we kick this horse any harder, it'll be glue. So all fine here. How are you? Terrible show. Recently leaked. Just give us a minute to lock it down. Negative. Don't need Andor. We can move on.
We'll move into episode 3 of the radio drama. To open the episode, the labor pool overseer awakened the Tantive 4's droids. The crotchety minor character didn't like robots and seemed unusually incompetent for an Alderaanian crewman. He felt the need to reassert his authority over machines and misidentified C-3PO. The guy addressed all droids and automata. I suspected comic relief because his demeanor was unlike those of the Navy personnel in this and previous episodes, and he wasn't aware of larger events. C-3PO and R2-D2 followed his instructions to visit Captain Antilles. Your perception of the labor pool overseer?
Well, again, he's another one of these very interesting characters that we get in this radio drama. These minor characters, who move the plot along or whatnot. They all seem to be minor characters from Welcome Back, Carter. Right? It's all these Jersey-esque New York, Queens, borough type folks. They all like, hey, yo, you guys, you stupid robots, you get out the robot. And it's just really weird. The accent feels out of place in a way, especially since you mentioned, all these other characters from Alderaan, including the military types, are all very serious and have a more regal cut about their dialogue. I don't know if it's some weird like below decks blue collar thing or what, but he feels like a guy who doesn't really enjoy his work. He's can't be really bothered with addressing the robots by their appropriate designations. He kind of reminds me of some people I worked for in fast food in high school. Abuse the workforce and not get their names right and just tell them to keep flipping those burgers and get back to work and all that kind of stuff. And so he's an interesting character in the Star Wars universe. He feels very real world in a way. The dialogue between C-3PO and R2-D2 while they're being yelled at by the Overseer is also interesting in the sense that it makes me not like C-3PO even more than I already don't like him. He comes across as very snobby and elitist for a droid, and this is beneath me, and I don't belong in the labor pool. I'm protocol droid, and all that kind of stuff. And again, over the top, Anthony Daniels, and yeah, it's an interesting scene. It's kind of awkward and weird, but he's again giving the we're droids and it's our lot in life to suffer and all this stuff, and they barely give us enough time to recharge before we go back to work. And there's something about Star Wars robots that's always problematic is that they have these personalities and they have all these emotions, and droids like C-3PO have all these anxieties and things. But at the same time, if they have all these personalities and they have all these emotions and things, it makes you feel uncomfortable a little bit because they are basically slave labor, right? They keep them down below decks. They plug them in at night. Next day, get out there and do work. Later on, we'll see R2 out on the hull as a decoy. Clearly, they have an expendability about them. So there's just sort of that weird, uncomfortable dichotomy of like, oh, we love R2 and 3PO because they're these spunky, fun characters and they have these personalities, but they are part of the automaton labor pool on the old Tantive 4, and their boss doesn't like them.
So I purchased the NPR radio dramatization script, and I want to share that in the script, R2 actually responds with more than beeps, or the script is responding for him. So upon activating, we have recharge somnolence, much like a snore. And then we move to squeals an alarm and comes to groggy and inquiring. And it just continues like this: hoots amiably, warbles solicitously, wazzles derisively, bleeps that his feelings are wounded. So
That's like me at work.
Well, actually, more unconcerned reply, I would say.
Oh yes, yeah. There's some of that too.
But it's interesting. So in the script, there's another layer to R2, and of course, it's probably best if we don't know exactly what R2-D2 is saying. But I get it. I get a kick out of the responses in the script, so I wanted to share it.
Yeah, no. Again, it's more stage direction, right? And again, because it's a radio drama with dialogue that we get from the characters, and as well as the sound effects and other things, we're getting more. I think. I bet you if you went back and looked at the original Star Wars script, it'll just say beeping, R2 beeps, right? Stuff like that. It probably doesn't give you those descriptor phrases as well.
It certainly gives Anthony Daniels cues to play off of. Helpful. I appreciate it also, again, it's the little things about the radio drama. So as the labor pool overseer is berating his charges, there's an announcement over the PA that the Tantive 4 will be reverting to real space in 15 minutes. And it just got me thinking about the workings of a starship, the day in, day out, and the difference between producing a film and a radio drama. But throughout this episode, little things like that, the PA announcement, just add a lot. You find yourself wishing that these things were also present in the film.
It is another layer that we get. We talked about this a little bit in the previous episodes, because it's a different type of media, and because it is an audio storytelling medium, that you do have to do these things, right? Because you don't have the visuals, you don't have the pictures of the guys running around doing stuff, and so that announcement in the background probably was a throwaway thing for the guys who were making this audio drama. Like, oh, we need some ambient noise about the ship. And you're like, oh, we'll just do a PA announcement, right? But to your point, it's so rich and it adds so much to it that you do kind of long for more of that in the video portion or the cinematic portion of Star Wars. But yeah, the automaton thing I thought was interesting because they talk about robots and automatons. I think like there's a couple of different categories that the PA announcer talks about in that moment, and it does put you in the day-to-day workings of that particular starship. But yeah, the whole thing, because it's a secret mission, quote unquote, the confusion of the labor overseer when they were coming out of hyperspace to real space, I could see that being a thing. Like we're telling as few people as possible what's going on. There's a throwaway line a little bit later Captain Antilles makes. There's a whole thing about tracking through hyperspace. Rian Johnson, they weren't sure how the Devastator caught up to him, and so keeping everybody out of the loop is probably a realpolitik thing that was smart, or at least they were trying to be smart. It's so much good. This entire drama has so much good stuff going on in the background. The smallest attention to detail of stuff. I mean, we'll get to it later on, but like when Luke is having his meal with Owen and Beru, you hear the plates, you hear them moving forks around, you hear it sound like they're moving food on plates. They spend so much energy on these little details that it makes this go from being something that could have been kind of farcical to something that's really high art.
On the bridge, Captain Antilles articulated the problems with entering a restricted solar system to Princess Leia. She explained they had only one chance to stop the Empire. When C-3PO and R2-D2 arrived, Antilles played a programming tape, computer noises, and voiced an actuating code to deliver a command control instruction, giving Princess Leia authority to issue orders to the droids. Yes, it's a mouthful. Leia commanded R2-D2 to go outside and fake repairs once the ship returned to normal space. In essence, she created an excuse for the Tantive 4 to enter the Toprawa system. A short scene, but one of significance. What did you think of it?
There's some throwbacks there to the first time we meet R2-D2 in the prequels, right? Out there working on the hull of a ship. So I don't know, again, the order of things. This is obviously before the prequels, so I don't know if this was something that George had somewhere in his notes that he pulled from again. But it's kind of an interesting through line to the job of the astromech droids when they're not riding around in X-Wing fighters. And so that was kind of cool. I like the security protocol thing. It felt almost a little bit like hypnosis or a brainwashing thing, but we'd also talked about previously the subconscious implant of information that we were giving people. So it kind of fell into that category as well. The Epsilon actual code that people use to reprogram robots. I think it was interesting in here, in this moment where he talks about these droids will do anything, including self-destruct or avoid self-preservation protocols or any of this stuff, once we program them right, which again was interesting. Droids sort of have that built into them. I mean, there's this sort of Asimov, the rules of AI or whatever, or robots, like they can't harm humans, or they can't by omission of action harm humans. With this moment where they're talking about, like, we can override them to do, but normally they're programmed to not cause problems, not hurt themselves, not hurt each other, protect themselves from harm. But we're going to strip away all those protocols because this is an emergency situation, and we're doing the business of the rebellion. But yeah, it was a nice ruse, I guess. Like they have no other reason to stop there except to meet with the rebellion. And so I'm sure that the Empire knows that the rebellion is on that planet. And so they happen to be passing through and they got a flat, right? So we had to pull over. It's a thin excuse, but they set it up, and they even talk about how it's kind of a thin excuse. I mean, Captain Antilles really kind of has to be convinced in this moment. Leia's kind of doing the full court press and, giving him the speech. And he's just like, man, I don't want to do this. This is dumb. We're going to get caught. We're all going to jail. She's like, no, we got to do it. We got to do it. And finally he agrees. And then the best thing they can come up with is the droids on the hull. And it kind of works, at least initially, right? When the Devastator comes out, comes after him, when they're having the communication with the Imperial officer, they like, hey, I'm sorry, we just broke down. We're just passing through. Don't mean to mess with your guys' business. And they get scanned, and they're like, we acknowledge that. We see the droid on your hull. Okay, this is plausible, but we're going to come aboard and take a check anyway. And then that's where the whole plan goes sideways. But it kind of works initially. It buys them that extra time to finish downloading the message and all that kind of stuff. So it has now completely been lost to the Rogue One film, I guess, now in time. Initially, this is how we learned how they got the plans. Now we learned, obviously, they did it differently, but it's cool. I liked it. It's kind of like Cloak and Dagger on the fly, right? Like, we're coming up with a plan. We need to figure out this plan now, and the droids are as convenient of an excuse as anything without actually damaging their ship to make it look like it's damaged. So yeah, it was cool. It worked out.
That was a good plan. An unidentified contact called Skyhook transmitted the plans. During the process, Leia finally told Antilles about the Death Star. So he didn't know. So he's very accommodating. The commander of Imperial Battle Cruiser Devastator, yes, cruiser, not Star Destroyer, detected the illegal transmissions and directed the Tantive 4 to accept Imperial investigators. R2-D2 went inside, and the Tantive 4 jumped to light speed after a brief chase. Leia revealed the next step, Tatooine. I'll pause here and get your thoughts.
Maybe Captain Antilles should attend staff meetings, or maybe Princess Leia could have started her convincing him to help her with, hey, there's a thing called the Death Star. So that did feel a little backward. But again, maybe it's this sort of operational thing where she's trying to keep all the details as close to the vest as possible so it doesn't get out. But yeah, she spends a lot of time at the beginning of this scene arguing with Antilles about why this is important, why we should do this, and he's giving her this lecture about my duty is to my ship, right? My honor, my duty is my ship, right? It's like, okay, we get that, but there's a larger galaxy and there's stuff going on. The Empire's bad, and he's like, I don't care, my duty is my ship. And then, like you say, after we get the plans, and she's like, these are the plans for the Death Star, and he's like, Death Star, what's that? And she's like, what's this thing? And it's going to kill everybody in the universe. And he's like, well, let's go, let's party, let's do this, right? Maybe if she had done that at the beginning of the scene, perhaps it wouldn't have taken so much convincing to get him to help her. But yeah, the Imperial, it was a cruiser. And then he was also talking about battle wagons. And there's some, we had mentioned briefly in the previous episode, we were talking about some of the old timey nautical stuff. The Empire's like, heave to, strike your colors. Well, wait a minute. This is very, very high seas adventure here right now. But yeah, the heave to thing I thought was a interesting throwback, fun comment from the Imperials. The Imperial investigators later on, they're in the scene as they're escaping, they're referred to as Inquisitors, which is interesting. Imperial Inquisitors, this would have been chronologically the first mention of them, so it would have been something, again, possibly in George Lucas's notes somewhere that ultimately made their way into the Rebels series and now into, of course, the Kenobi fiasco. But kind of cool, right? It's a deep cut throwback. There's a few things in this radio drama that when you look at them now in hindsight, you wonder, were these things that George had in his notes and in his plans for the greater Star Wars universe, and then either things got cut through editing or through script writing revisions and things like that, but felt really strong about that he kind of wanted to explore later. And it feels there's some stuff in here that maybe Dave Filoni reached into the bag and grabbed and pulled forward into some of the other the series that he worked on. So yeah, it just, again, some of these fun little one-line things that get thrown out by minor characters, and you look at them now in the context of the larger Star Wars universe and all the media that's come since then, and you can find some of those roots here in the radio broadcast.
Few things from this scene. Leia's mention of memory purges for droids. So we know that droids can and often do have their memories wiped. But Antilles said he'd prefer to do it himself when the ship reached port, probably fearing a security breach. If someone were to download R2-D2 and C-3PO's memories, they could learn things that obviously Leia and Antilles don't want them to know. As the Tantive 4 escapes, goes into hyperspace, Antilles observed Princess Leia needed rest. And he does this in a very polite way, but essentially like, you look tired. Why don't you go put your feet up on while we take you to Tatooine? And she agrees. So yeah, Leia takes a power nap. And then the last thing I'll mention is here begins the descriptions of Tatooine, the Tatooine that we know and love. This completely fits our conception of Tatooine. Antilles describes it as barren and unfriendly a world as human beings ever settled. So there'll be a Vader comment later on, this miserable speck of a planet. But after 18 Disney Plus series set on Tatooine, it doesn't quite feel the same. But those are a few things I pulled from the scene that I enjoyed.
Yeah, this is a continuation of perhaps some of the patriarchal influences in the galaxy that we've witnessed in previous episodes. Though I suppose maybe she does look tired. I mean, she gunned down an Imperial officer after wrestling him over dinner and then jumped on a ship and took off to save the universe. So maybe she just had a long day. Yeah, I thought that was a very weird sort of thing. Hey, we just had a major escape and we got away from the Empire and it was all very frantic and crazy and we're all just hyped up on adrenaline. You should probably go take a nap. Like, what? What just happened there? But yeah, that was funny, interesting, weird. And then Tatooine is we, like you say, over the years we've really only heard Luke rip on it, and then we heard Anakin kind of rip on it too. But it was really more ripping on sand, not necessarily the planet. But then, yeah, we get these descriptions of it as this horrible place, and how barren and desolate and terrible it is. And then yes, Lord Vader gives us that Tatooine, that whole that evil place full of sand that I don't like. But of course, we don't know that he doesn't like Tatooine yet because we haven't had the prequels. And yeah, no, everybody seems to be really down on Tatooine in this radio drama, and it has a reputation in the galaxy. I mean, even when Princess Leia says to Captain Antilles, "Hey, we got to also now now that we've done this, we're going to set course." Like everybody on the ship has the same reaction. He says, "All right." She's like, "We got to go to Tatooine." He's like, "Tatooine? What the hell? That place is way out there. That's terrible. Oh my god!" Wow. And then after she convinces him, he turns around to the helmsman. He's like, "Set course for Tatooine." The guy's like, "Tatooine? What the hell? That place is terrible." It's like everybody on the ship has the same attitude about the planet. So apparently, it has a terrible reputation. I mean, beyond Mos Eisley. So there's that. So we're now headed off to Tatooine with the Devastator hot on our heels, and we're about ready to finally start the movie as we know it.
Yeah, so focused on the radio drama. Yeah, this is the beginning of A New Hope.
Yeah, almost 3 full episodes of radio drama, and we're just now getting to that point. I mean, it's great. I mean, I am not complaining whatsoever. We kind of joked about it in the last episode. Like, are we ever going to get to the film? Well, we're here now. And it took us about an hour and a half of a 5.5-hour radio drama to finally get to the opening crawl, which is Princess Leia has got the plans and she's trying to get away. And there we are.
Now that I have the background and the context from the radio drama, I wouldn't change a thing. I appreciate it so much. Though it took time to get to the beginning of the film, well worth it in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, it adds so much. We've talked about the characters and a lot of the exposition that goes on and the backstory, and it gives just so much more richness and layers to these characters that we've already known and loved for a long time. But I mean, we're about to be introduced in the film in a very fast-paced, abrupt kind of way, and we get to experience a whole range of acting from these voice actors, and then of course people like Mark Hamill who played their characters. And it's there's some things like you and I talked about that we were happy with, and probably there's some other things we felt could have been either trimmed or shortened. But for the most part, everything that's come up to this point has added value to Star Wars and the Star Wars universe. And so, hour and a half to get there, 2 hours to get there, doesn't matter to me. I was enjoying the ride the whole time.
The radio drama provided more details about the Tantive 4's capture over Tatooine than A New Hope. First, Captain Antilles and Princess Leia were completely surprised by the Devastator's rapid pursuit through hyperspace. You touched on this point earlier. Antilles said the Devastator had to track us by following a signal. Someone aboard the Tantive must have smuggled in a homing beacon. So the rebels had a spy on board. I prefer the simple explanation to any form of hyperspace tracking. I love it. I love it. It's clean, it's simple, and it even adds another layer of urgency, of a fear of oppression. Who can you trust, even within your own ranks? And it explains so much of what's been going on for the better part of 2+ episodes in the radio drama. Why Leia didn't tell Antilles about the Death Star plans until a few minutes ago. Okay, she should have included him, but why they're being so secretive, the memory wipes for the droids when dealing with the wounded rebel. We need to move him, we need to get him out of here. Anyway, so your thoughts, hyperspace tracking.
Again, it's kind of funny because we go back and look at that with the hindsight of having experienced the sequel trilogy and the abject, convoluted, weird, out of place, overdone, silly notion of hyperspace tracking and all the stuff that went with it. Like you say, the easy answer is the easy answer. Like somebody has a signal on the ship and they found us, and it goes back to, there was an Imperial fellow on the planet, might have had people with him. There are people who, in every civil war or every rebellion, there are people who are not on the side of the rebels. There's people who like the status quo. So could have been any one of them. Could have been somebody. Could have been the labor pool overseer. He could have been like, you know what? I'm tired of these guys taking advantage of me. I hate this job. I'm calling the Empire, right? You never know, but it seems perfect in a way. Like it's a simple, straightforward explanation. These people are working in a clandestine way. Sure, they're going to be paranoid, and sure, there are going to be people that are going to be trying to stop them from doing this. So, of course, the possibility is always there that one of their people could have ratted them out. Very simple, very easy, very well done. Doesn't make you stop in the middle of the whole thing and go, okay, wait a minute, how does that work? If you're on this ship and you follow that ship and there's a signal to this ship, but if you break the signal, then you can't do the thing, and then I've got to sneak in and I've got to blow up the little thing and it looks like the flux capacitor. Like no. It's just somebody sent a signal and you're like, wow, that's so easy. That's great. And who knows? And we never get the answer to this. It doesn't matter. We get to the point where Devastator catches up to them, and it's on. They're at Tatooine, and the battle ensues. And the dialogue that they have in this moment, the planning, what do we do? Do we run? Do we hide? Do we fight? Do we pitch the droids out the airlock and pretend like nothing happened? Let them come aboard and search us. There's all these things going on. There's all these conversations like, what's the best course of action? It's more layers to the story, more explanation of what's going on. I mean, if this was without having seen Rogue One or any of that stuff, right? You start off with this ship chasing a ship, and they're having a gun battle, and it's over Tatooine, and that's great. But we don't know. We learn later in the movie Star Wars about what hyperspace is, right? And we learn about going faster than light and all this kind of stuff. But that's later. So in the movie, you have two slow-moving ships shooting at each other, and so while it's spectacular and visually stunning and all this stuff, if you are watching it and thinking about it, you're like, okay, how do we get here? What's going on? Is this the fastest that these ships can go? Like all that kind of stuff. This description or this discussion is like, okay, we've been bouncing around and they've been following us and we don't know why or how they're capable of doing it, but there's got to be a traitor. And then it's like, well, what do we do and how do we deal with the problem? And it feels more real world or I should say real world. It feels more realistic. The conversations that are going on, the planning in the heat of the moment, in the middle of the battle, the explanations for what's going on, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. It's all much more practical within the Star Wars universe that we know. So again, the action scenes in this radio drama, especially when it comes to space battles and stuff, are very well done and very well executed for being something that you can't see at all. So again, these conversations that the various soldiers are having, or that Princess Leia is having, or whatnot, it's like it keeps you in it. It makes you feel like you're right there. And this was, again, it's one of these scenes where we could have used some more of this in A New Hope. But yeah, again, more fun stuff in the radio drama.
So the Devastator appears. After the Tantive 4 took a direct hit on its main solar fin, its reactor and main drive had to be shut down, lest the starship blow itself apart. The Devastator used a tractor beam to maneuver the Tantive 4 into its dorsal boarding lock. To use your description, we have nautical phrases. The Devastator telling the Tantive 4, "We have you under our guns." Captain Antilles has something that he says at this point. "They've made fast to us."
Oh, yes. Hold fast.
Yes. No grappling hooks, but nevertheless, the
old-timey
well battle of the seas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, this drama is full of this stuff. It's great. Some science fiction franchises like Star Trek fully embrace that, right? They take we started off on the ocean and now we're in space, but we've held on to a lot of traditions and a lot of terminology and things like that. Star Wars is obviously completely different, right? It's a long time ago, galaxy far, far away, different words, different stuff. But this radio drama brings it right all back. It's all turtlenecks and eye patches and all kinds of weird stuff like that.
Yeah. Even if you've seen the first film over a dozen times, you'll find something new and interesting to add context in the episode. Captain Antilles gave an order to evacuate the bridge, issue arms to all personnel, and prepare to repel boarders. Here again, old-timey nautical, we're repelling boarders.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners experienced the stormtroopers' attack through reports from crewmen. In lieu of watching action sequences, the radio drama created urgency with frequent reports coming in from various parts of the ship. We're keeping up with the attack through updates. One had the feeling of a constricting net time is running out. Once Princess Leia convinced Captain Antilles of her droid plan, he gave directions to a portside cluster of escape pods and began jettisoning other clusters to conceal their true purpose. Fun fact, Captain Antilles gave his blaster to Princess Leia. The Defender sporting blaster pistol with the long, narrow barrel originally belonged to him. So, your observations.
The use of the updates from the various decks of the ship about what's going on, so brilliant in trying to convey this particular combat scenario that's going on without having the assistance of visual. The word to use, constricting, is perfect. You're there on the bridge with Captain Antilles and you're hearing, okay, they took this deck and they're in this section and they took this deck, and it's like you do kind of feel the noose tightening. You get that sense that this is not going well and that it's only a matter of time before the Empire seizes the ship, which of course we know they will because we've seen the movie. But they did such a great job of that, and that was like the big takeaway. I do think it's kind of cool how Princess Leia's blaster is actually Captain Antilles' blaster. I mean, at least for the radio drama purposes, giving her the sort of not quite secret passage, but the fast way to get there, by using this passageway and going through this particular area of the ship and trying to avoid the troops. And there's some of that where you can hear the stormtroopers talking and walking around. She's trying to avoid or evade them or whatnot. It's very well done. It's making use of all of these different elements of radio in order to present to you the struggle and the battle on the ship without ever showing you a single shot being fired.
An accolade to share. Love the Imperial officers. Not what they stand for, but the portrayal. These are bit parts, characters with one or two lines, but there is a smugness conveyed by every actor playing an Imperial officer. The communication between the Devastator and the Tantive 4, both in the Taprawa system and over Tatooine. When the bridge is finally taken, the Imperial officer says, "You didn't even have the guts to fight, eh?" A chuckle, like a scoff. The actors captured that superiority, that smugness of the Empire.
Yeah, I love that too. And we kind of talked a lot about Tyon and stuff in the last episode, but the Imperials in this are played perfectly, absolutely perfectly.
So the droids escape, Captain Antilles' death, and Princess Leia's capture more or less match the film. Leia used the previously established voice commands to remove all R2-D2's restrictions, including self-preservation. Good writing. She instructed the droid to take an escape pod and find Obi-Wan Kenobi with given coordinates. Vader's reaction to killing Antilles was interesting. After snapping the captain's neck, he described Antilles as a stubborn insect whose death was without meaning. The detail that tipped the Imperials was the firing of one escape pod's steering thrusters. Leia told R2-D2 to navigate the pod, so the bad guys eventually pursued it. As I said before, I appreciate explanations. In many ways, the radio drama accomplishes more than the film.
I would agree with that. The fact that we get in this little moment here, Princess Leia giving, the instructions, of course, to R2, putting the plans in him and recording her message, but she also, the fact that the mention of the coordinates is huge, because in the film, it feels all very coincidental and lucky, because we don't know what R2-D2 is saying, and all we get is 3PO's histrionics about everything in response to it. So it feels almost very convenient. Oh, you just happen to land in the desert that happens to be near Luke Skywalker, which happens to be near Ben Kenobi, so we can reunite the droids, et cetera, et cetera. And in this one, it's like, no, R2, the whole talk about his secret mission or whatever that 3PO keeps giving him crap about is actually, it's real. He has explicit instructions. He knows where he's supposed to go. With all the protocols stripped away, he's very purposeful in his work, and he's very driven to do the thing that he's trying to do. And yeah, even though it does follow the film, but the thing, in the movie, it's one it is assumed that there is one that's shot to the planet, so when they find the one, they know what to do, they know where to look and all that kind of stuff, right? But now that we learned in the radio drama that they fired all of them, and that those Imperials are kind of smart, they figured out that the only one was doing steering, so let's follow that one. So the ruse of the decoy worked momentarily, but not forever. So it buys some time for our heroes to get ahead of things. But again, the driving of the steering of the pod, the assignment of coordinates, so he knew where to steer the pod, giving him his mission, stripping away the protocols for safety. I mean, all those things, like you say, are the explanation that get us to where we need to be without feeling MacGuffin-y. That's really quite helpful when you bring it into the context of the film.
You tell a much more engaging and believable story when you have antagonists and protagonists behaving intelligently. It raises the stakes. So Princess Leia's plan is excellent. It has very low odds of success, but it's the best plan for the circumstances, and it actually works. But then on the other side, the Empire isn't needlessly blasting escape pods. They're being scanned, there are no life forms, and yet the distinction between the one pod that actually begins to maneuver and the others which just continue off on the path of their ejection. The point that I'm trying to make, sorry, I digress. But the point that I'm trying to make is you tell a better story when both sides are using logic, move, counter move. I really like that about the radio drama. You don't have stupid mistakes taking place for the sake of moving the plot along. You don't have one side behaving intelligently and we need these characters to be here, here, and here. We need to address this point, that point, and the other. And we really don't care about storytelling, and we really don't care about logic. The viewers don't care or aren't smart enough to put the pieces together to think deeply about it. It's an oversimplification to say this story is written for adults but appeals to children. But I guess in essence, as I'm rambling, that's the point that I'm making. Unlike a recent Star Wars series on Disney Plus, I appreciate the story taking me seriously enough to apply problem solving and good decision making to both sides.
Absolutely. And I'm sure some of this is a function of the radio format, but on the other hand, it's just plain good storytelling, right? The writers of this particular radio drama, they look at the original story, they saw the movie, they've got the script, they've got George's notes or whatever, and they're like, there's a couple of things that we can do here. They can really firm up this story or stitch it together, but it also helps us get from scene to scene because we're talking about it, we're not showing it. It's really smart writing for a lot of different reasons. The things that you talked about, good storytelling, connectivity, doesn't feel so haphazard and silly, but it also is totally perfect to the format that you're presenting your story in. And so, yeah, everybody's a winner here with this kind of stuff. And I would like to hope or think that there are people who are still involved in making Star Wars that are looking to examples like this for inspiration, because, like you say, recent performance has not been good.
Credit to Brian Daley. We know Brian Daley consulted George Lucas about the narrative. And sometimes logic is a casualty of editing a film. Many modern films suffer from choppiness and things that don't quite make sense. If I could draw a parallel with Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy, when I went to see Return of the King in the theater, I did not enjoy it. There were large pieces of the story missing. There were these jumps. Later, when I watched the extended version of the film, there are the missing pieces. I enjoyed it very much. To cut the director's story down to a theatrical version, the film really suffered. Maybe this comes down to editing. The radio drama didn't have to be edited. This is it in its entirety. A much longer, much more detailed version of A New Hope, and it's better for it.
Yeah, your Lord of the Rings example is perfect. Trusting in the product, trusting in the writing, and giving the audience everything should be the guiding principle. But we have a society whose attention span is very, very short and getting shorter every day. The studios don't think that people are capable of enjoying the spectacle for what it is, and all of its elements, not just the explosions and the action scenes. And so something like this, it's really cool to me because like the radio drama is longer than it's almost 3 times as long as the movie, and it doesn't feel like it's taking too long because everything you're getting for the most part is really solid character building, world building, plot development. And yes, it's even though it's a story we already know because the movie's been out, you're getting so much more on top of this. And some of it is musical interludes between scenes, and I get it, and some of it is the credits at the end of each episode or whatever. But the conversation, the dialogue, the characters, backstories, their interaction with the world and with other characters, the background characters that, like you say, they're only there for a minute that throw out a line. It feels like everything there is really kind of hitting on all cylinders, and it's really everything brings something to the table, and so therefore you don't feel like your time is being wasted. I can go to an 80-minute summer blockbuster and feel like I wasted my time, and I go to a 5-hour epic that has an intermission and all stuff and feel like I want more. It depends on the writing. This particular product that we're talking about today is some really high quality writing.
You didn't say much about Vader. There isn't enough Vader. There is not enough Vader.
No, some of the things that that I missed in this particular episode after the first 2 was, of course, Brock Peters as Vader. I mean, we got a little bit of him. We had his interaction when they first took over the Tantive, and then sort of at the end there when they're getting set to invade the planet and go find the droids and all that stuff. But I know we'll get more of him a little bit later in the series, but man, his portrayal and the voice and all that stuff, it's just, on one hand it's comic gold, and on the other hand it's just so good. Anytime you can have Brock Peters Vader, it's awesome. I mean, and again, the stuff that they wrote for him to say in this particular episode was hilarious, especially that Tatooine at the end. It's just like, what is that? Like, I don't even know where that comes from the character of Vader or any of that stuff. But yeah, but when he crushes Antilles and calls him an insect, your death was without meaning, and it's just it's so good. Anyway, I could use way more Brock Peters in this episode, but I understand it's a part of the movie where we don't get a lot of Vader, so it's fine.
Yeah, Peters Darth Vader is more verbose than the film version of Darth Vader, and that really threw me the first time I heard it, and I've settled in, and I really like it. I really enjoy it.
It's an acquired taste. One of those things, yeah. It's like the first time you try it, and you're like, I'm not sure if I like this. I want to go back and try it one more time, and then by the third time, you're like, why have I never had this in my life? I can't get enough of it. And yeah, and that's Brock Peters, man. His Vader is awesome. The thing about him being more verbose, you would think that it would take away from the menace of Vader. One of the great things about Vader is he just walks into a room and he breathes hard and everybody freaks out. And you're like, okay, this guy's scary. And so he doesn't speak a lot, and when he does, it carries a lot of weight, and it's very powerful dialogue. And so you would think in this radio drama that him espousing all these things and these side comments about that Tatooine, and that you're going to kind of think, well, maybe it diminishes him. It doesn't. It really doesn't. We talked about his big conversation they had on the landing pad there when Leia was running supplies, and it's just he is he's still all Vader, for sure.
Forced to choose? James Earl? No, I won't.
Oh, nice. Who wore it better?
I won't force you to choose.
No,
We'll save it for a later show.
That one might have to go behind the paywall. I don't know if we want our fans knowing the answer to that. But yes, if you were
answer, you must pay.
That's right. That's right. I put a price on very few things, but that's one of them. Yes. If you were one of our listeners who happened to be at Star Wars Celebration, you may have seen some Galactic Initiative stickers floating around with Brock Peters on them. An interesting experience getting those out there to Star Wars fans who have not listened to the radio drama. It took some explaining by our street team to get people on board with what it actually was, because there were some questions about why is there a Star Trek guy on a Star Wars sticker? And it's like, well, let me tell you a little bit about Brock Peters. Have you heard the good news of Brock Peters, Darth Vader? Anyway, that was fun. Yeah. I'm sure there's a Christopher Walken out there talking about cowbell, but he really means Brock Peters.
Closing, or
will we ever get to the end of this radio drama? Stay tuned.
Felt like you were channeling a little James T there for a moment.
James T. Oh, nice. I could channel my craft.
Ever get to the end of the radio drama?
Of course, now that's recorded, so there you go.
Our discussion of Black Knight, White Princess, and Pawns has come to an end. I had a great time with our review. Again, quality Star Wars. It brings joy. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, my friend.
We will continue to review the original Star Wars radio drama with future shows. If you like the video, please consider a thumbs up and a subscription to the channel. Check out Galactic Initiative for all things Star Wars. Talk to you soon.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.